American Fiction is a comedy drama directed by Cord Jefferson in his directorial debut, and it is based on the 2001 novel Erasure by Percival Everett. In this video, I will only be discussing the film and not referencing the novel. Ironically, the film is about a writer called Monk, whose novel becomes a film. However, Monk is not happy as to the reasons behind why he believes his novel has become a success. Going off the trailer, I thought this film would be a simple comedy and did not expect for it to be as complex as it is and for it to tackle so many different issues as it does. In this video, I want to mainly discuss the various reasons highlighted in the film as to why Monk's novel may have been so successful, even though ultimately they seem to be the secondary plot of the film. Early on in the film, we get an insight into what Monk believes is wrong with the publishing industry when he discovers one of his books is in the African American section at the bookstore. Monk explains that the context of his book has nothing to do with African Americans, and therefore he is confused as to why it is in this section. Ultimately, he wants his work to be judged for what it is, and not segregated or promoted based on his racial background. This sort of reminded me of the film Tar, where the main character also argues that the content of the work is ultimately most important. Monk feels almost insulted that his work is being treated differently because he is African American. Monk later visits a seminar during which he listens to Santara Golden read extracts from her new and very successful book. He is shocked at both the quality of writing as well as the uninspired content of the book, and above all, feels that it is promoting negative black stereotypes. He then decides to write his satirical novel mocking these kinds of books, filled with grammatical errors and black cliches, and wants his manager to send it off to the publishers in order to express his anger at the state of the publishing industry. To both his and his manager's surprise, the novel immediately attracts lots of positive attention and publishing deals. Monk and his manager, however, have different opinions as to why this may be. Monk blames the success of such books on guilt felt by white people, which causes them to promote and support such novels. It is clear why a feeling of guilt would result in someone wanting to compensate for it by supporting African American books. But why does this result in books containing negative stereotype to experience particularly higher promotion and success? Why is it not just all African American books in general? This is because of the source of this guilt. People who hold these negative stereotypes in their heads feel guilty because of this. So when they see these stereotypes in books, they feel less guilty for having them, and by buying and reading these books, they make themselves feel righteous as they believe they are educating themselves about those who are worse off, as well as helping them by supporting their work. Essentially, the more inferior and helpless the African Americans are portrayed, the better they can make themselves feel about supporting them. This sort of mind state is clearly seen by the various individuals in the film in charge of publishing books and handing out book awards. When Monk changes the title of his novel to Fuck, one of the publishers even says the book is now more black. The film shows how the people who act as though they are supporting African Americans the most, in fact hold very negative opinions of them, and are also profiting from degrading the overall perception of black people whilst convincing themselves and each other that they are doing a righteous thing. Although Monk may be a bit bitter that he hasn't had the same success as other writers, this is how he sees things from the many dealings he has had with people in the industry. This ironic self-righteousness is hilariously illustrated in the scene where the panel of white judges decides that Monk's novel should be the winner as they need to listen to black voices, while simultaneously ignoring the only two black voices in the room who do not think it should be the winner. These judges share a condescending attitude whereby they have decided that they know best as to how to help the African American community even better than black people themselves. Monk's manager has a different opinion as to why Monk's novel may have been so successful. Of course, he is more motivated by money, and therefore he is trying to convince Monk to accept the deal. However, what he says is still also very interesting and valid. He uses different editions of Johnny Walker as an analogy to show that products which are of higher quality and which take longer to make are not necessarily of higher demand. He says this is because the average person not only does not have the mental capacity to appreciate Monk's work, but also the average person does not want to read books which are intellectually challenging. They prefer simple and familiar stories, which are entertaining and make them feel better about themselves. This is evident in our society today in all aspects of entertainment, whether it be books, films, songs, or TV shows, which through public demand have become so intellectually vapid that a whole new genre known as trash TV has been created. Essentially, using those that we consider in some way inferior as entertainment to make ourselves feel better is nothing new. It is not exclusive to any one given race. This is essentially what Monk's manager is trying to say, and although Monk acknowledges this, he insists he does not want to be part of it. He believes this kind of content is not making the world a better place and therefore does not want to profit from this. Something which is very interesting and which may support Monk's manager's theory happens later on towards the end of the film, when Monk speaks to his mother. His mother tells him that he has always been a genius, and because of this, he has been lonely, comparing him to his father. We can see that, perhaps, in the same way that Monk has struggled to find friends because of his intelligence, Monk's work is struggling to sell because of its intellectual depth. During a meeting of panel judges, Monk meets Santara Golden, who to his surprise sees his novel for what it is, a melodramatic cliché of African Americans. Hypocritically, she doesn't see this in her own work. She enjoys the success her book has had and does not see the social damage these kinds of books may cause. She deflects all of Monk's questions and arguments well and does not admit that there is any truth in what he is saying. She claims these stories also need to be told. However, this is not addressing Monk's point. Monk isn't suggesting that stories about black drug dealers should not be told. He is making the point that there are too many of them, damaging the perception of African Americans. Monk says that the black community has more potential than this. Santara then claims that by this he is insinuating that they are not good enough in his eyes. This is logically not true. One can have potential for more whilst already being exceptionally good at something. The two are not mutually exclusive. Essentially, she deflects everything he has to say very well, and it seems her lack of self-awareness is somewhat intentional. She wants to continue profiting from her novels, and therefore does not want to even consider the idea that her work is damaging her community. Of course, Santara is just a small part of the problem that Monk believes is happening, and he himself hypocritically continues to profit from his own novel. We of course sympathize with Monk, as we know he needs the money to help his mother at a time during which his family is going through a crisis. There is no greed or ill intentions in Monk. Nevertheless, making money from his novel goes against what he has been preaching and against his moral beliefs. What's interesting about this film is that this whole commotion surrounding the novel is really the secondary plot of the film. The main plot follows Monk's private life and the many struggles he faces surrounding his family and friends. It tackles many complex issues such as grief and acceptance in the context of his upper/middle class family. By doing this, we can see the film exhibits a degree of self-awareness, as it upholds the message that Monk has been preaching. If the whole film had been a satirical comedy about the ironies of promoting negative black stereotypes, then we still would have spent the duration of the film looking at negative black stereotypes, which would be contradictory to the film's message. Instead, the film breaks the cycle it has been preaching about by illustrating a side of the black community which is underrepresented, that being the upper/middle class of African Americans. Overall, I think there is a lot of interesting points raised in this film by many different characters, which all have a lot of truth in them. What this film does really well is it explores a highly charged social issue without shoving an ideology down its viewers' throats. Instead, through comical scenes and diverse characters, it explores different points of view and shows the overall complexity of the issue. Thank you very much for watching my video. Please leave a comment and a like and let me know what you think.